What if I said the system was never the goal, but it was just the signal? I'm Zakia Ringgold, and welcome back to Business Tech Unraveled, where we not only explore tech and systems and tools, but we also talk about the heartbeat behind the hustle. Today's episode isn't polished, it isn't packaged, but it's probably the most honest one I've shared so far. Because this week, I cracked something open. Not a new system, not a new strategy, but a question. One I'd been avoiding. One that changed everything. And that question is, if I'm always building, what am I avoiding feeling? That question didn't come from a book or a coach. It came in the quiet. And if you heard the previous episode for this one about the quiet anchor, you know that I am really struggling there. And that question came when I sat down to finally do what I'd been circling around for months, finishing. And I couldn't. Let me rewind a bit. A few days ago, I was deep in building mode. If you followed along, you know I created an entire Notion ecosystem full of all of my projects, the campaigns that go along with them, the reflection trackers so that I can actively reflect, what am I doing? What am I feeling? What am I avoiding? All of those things, automations, as well as standard operating procedures, not just for me, for my team, as well as for future clients. The thing is, I loved it. It wasn't just functional, it was beautiful. And it finally mirrored the way that my brain works. But then I realized something. The system wasn't the destination. It was the proof. Proof that I'm not disorganized, right? We carry all of this in our head and it's like, oh, I just got to get a better organization system. It was deeper than that. It was proof that I've always had vision. It just lived in tabs and notebooks and sticky notes that I kept in my head and somewhere I could probably never find 2 weeks later. And for the first time, I gave myself a container to hold all of it. Now, here's the part that got me. I'd been moving fast, proud of what I built, checking things off the list, and then I sat still and everything slowed down. And in that stillness, I remembered something I said in a previous episode, that I crave a quiet anchor. And I felt it, not in a retreat, not in a nap, but in full alignment, in knowing that the system wasn't there to push me harder. It was here to let me breathe. But right behind that peace was fear, because once everything was in the system, the next step was delivering. And that's where the resistance really kicked in. Not because I didn't believe in the work, but because finishing meant being seen. And somewhere deep down, I was afraid that if I shipped it, if I shared the post, if I hit publish, and the world didn't respond, then maybe the silence would mean I'm not enough. You see how I tied the delivery to me and my self-image. So what did I do? I kept building because building felt safer than being still. In motion protected me from that fear. But this time, I didn't stop at the fear. I stayed in the stillness. I asked the hard questions. Why does this feel so risky? Why do I trust my systems more than my voice? Why do I trust my hands more than my heart? Why does rest feel like it's something that I have to earn, or it's not for me unless I've crossed everything off the list? And the answers weren't always pretty, but to me, they were honest. And honesty is where the breakthrough happened. I see now that I've used motion as my armor, that I equated what I output to my self-worth, that every new system was a way to prove something, either to others or to myself. But here's what's different now. This system that I've built, it's not armor, but it's a reflection that I can look at. It reflects my rhythm of how I work, my brilliance of the ideas that I come up with, and my humanity. Like, why am I actually saying yes to this particular project? Or why am I willing to do that particular campaign? And I'm learning that I can show up without overexposing my heart every time I share something. And I'm telling you this because maybe you've been there. Maybe you've stayed in motion to avoid the silence. Maybe your value has gotten tangled in the doing. Maybe you're brilliant and buried under tabs too. And maybe you need a system that isn't here to scale, but to soothe, to hold you, to free you, to remind you you don't have to build it all alone. So here's what I'll leave you with. What have you been building to avoid feeling? And where do you still think perfection is the prerequisite for your visibility? And what could happen if you built a system not just for productivity, but for peace? So thank you for letting me share this small part of my journey. If this resonates, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM. You can always go to the Ask Zakia page on the Business Tech Lab website, leave a comment, or share this with someone else who builds to feel safe. And if you're curious about that Notion dashboard that helped me see it all clearly, it's not just a template. Like I said earlier, it is a mirror. And I'll be sharing more about that soon. And you'll be able to see like how does that all come together, and maybe how you can take pieces of it for what you're working on. But until then, breathe, build slowly, and trust that you don't have to prove what you've already become. I'm Zakia Ringgold, and this is Business Tech Unraveled. I'll talk to you soon.